Okay, we're live. Let me just spend 2 seconds moving my notes around a little bit. Sorry. Okay. This is going to be a little bit of a long live stream because it's about Windows telemetry and as well as bloatware on your computer, slowing your computer down. We have a lot of things to cover, so I'm going to start off right into it. I'm going to switch over to a computer that I have over here. Let me just start with that. Well, hi, everybody in the chat. The computer that we have here that I did off screen basically is it's a fresh load of Windows 10. The only thing I loaded on here was the drivers, and pretty much that's about it. Drivers and nothing really special. This is all default loaded with Windows. It will show you all garbage that usually comes on a Windows 10 machine, and it'll also show you like some other things that we could talk about, basically removing other bloatware. Even if your machine is a little older and maybe you've used it for a while, this will also remove a lot of that extra bloatware that you have on your system. Let me switch over to the other screen. I put myself in the corner here. There we go. Actually, you know what? Let me go to the bottom corner. There we go. Let me make this bigger. Okay. Maybe over here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So this is the default Windows 10 load. Nothing really special here. As you can tell, it loads up a search bar, it loads up Edge, Windows, Store, the mail program, and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you click the open icon, you'll notice that it already has some drivers, but it already has an antivirus. And it has, like your news programs and a whole bunch of other junk laying out there. Also, Cortana's already loaded. Again, things that you may or may not want. When you get a system from us, we run this PowerShell script, or in other words, go through it and remove all of this software that is just bloating up your system. So to get started, it already has 4 notifications, and I haven't even done anything yet. This is just the graphic card driver loading up junk. So, to get rid of all this stuff, I'm going to show you exactly step by step on how to do all that. So we're going to do the manual way first to show you. I'm not going to do all of the manual options. It pretty much repeats itself over and over and over again. So I'm going to just show you guys the first set of how to do this. And then after that, you should be able to just use you should either repeat it over and over and over again, or you're going to end up having to just use the PowerShell script. And the PowerShell script does save a lot of time because it does exactly what I'm going to go over right now. So if you click on Start, which is down here, if you notice, all of this stuff is loaded. Office, which is not a real license. This is actually a trial period, and they don't really specify that until you get using it. Disney Plus is also on here, a whole movies and TV, Spotify, stuff that you really probably may or may not use, but it's defaultly loaded. If you're buying a machine from like HP and Dell, you'd have a lot more on here. You'll have things like McAfee, Norton, and a whole bunch of other programs that you may or may not want. Our script will take all of that stuff out. But to show you how to do it manually, you would right-click the Start button. You click on Apps and Features. And then what you would normally do is you would select each one of these and click on Install. That's going to take a lot of time because you're going to have to go through the entire list here, which will, you have to go one by one, which takes a very long time. And it's a lot of clicking, I'll be honest. That's the reason why we made this PowerShell script, to kind of get rid of all this without having to go through it. Now, if you want to do this manually, you can go through each one, click uninstall, and remove each program. Now, there's another problem when you get down to things like this, where it says App Installer. App Installer cannot be removed by yourself. But our PowerShell script can remove this program. That's the thing. This is not available to you directly by hitting uninstall, but using our PowerShell script, it will actually remove those programs because it doesn't read Windows apps and features as its default security profile. It's using your administration profile to remove these things off of your system. So yeah, so basically if you wanted to do this yourself, you could literally go through every one of these items and then try to figure out which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to remove, and that may take a long time. By the way, our PowerShell script, there's nothing permanent about it, so if you want to re-add one of these applications later, you can still do that from the Windows Store or from the website directly. So there's nothing that will stop or prevent you from going back the other way. So basically you could go through each one of these one at a time. I already downloaded our script to this machine. We're going to make this available on our website. I just made a folder on the C drive called B1. And I have the little PowerShell script here, and I have some little documentation on how to run it. There is one or two commands that you have to run on your own because it will not allow me to just run this file without some sort of security key or check. The first command tells you that you can bypass that check. Why I'm doing that is because this file right now is not compiled. It is not, it's not protected at all. It's literally a text file. So with a bunch of code in it, which is not really code, it's like most of it's commands, some of it's code, but it's open source, so you can view it, you know what it's going to do, what it's going to execute. That's why I left it that way. There are other ways to make it a little bit easier to run, but then it means that I have to compile that compile it closed, and then you won't be able to see the changes that it's going to make. So before we run the script, I'm going to download quickly Notepad++ to open it up, which I did not install yet, so bear with me. I hate Edge. I really hate Edge. You know what, I'll just deal with it for right now. Download. Sure. Yeah, of course it's in my way over there. There we go. Notepad++ is just I'm going to use this because it highlights a lot of things, but you don't have to use Notepad++. You could literally use just Notepad, but I like Notepad++ because it actually shows you like a breakdown of actually the script and the features of it. So let me just drag that over here. Now, this script, basically it'll write out, that it's running. It's going to also remove each package one at a time. When it runs, it's going, if you say to yourself, well, Brian, I don't want to remove everything. You know what I mean? So maybe you might not want to remove everything. At that point, what you need to do is you could go back into the script and then comment out or delete anything you don't want to remove. So if you want to keep all of the Xbox stuff, like for an example, let's say you have an Xbox and you want to keep it, you would just delete this whole section. So you would just highlight everything. Actually, I can do it with the mouse. Highlight everything, and then just hit delete on the keyboard, and it's gone. I don't want to delete this. I actually want to remove it, so we're going to leave that go. Or if you say to yourself, I want to maybe use this file somewhere else, you could also just comment it out. You can use a little pound sign in front of everything, and that will also comment it out and will not run that line. You can do that. So if you want to be a little more selective about what you want to take out, you can do that. Personally speaking, I think all of this can pretty much go. There's a lot that it's going to remove. If you notice, it also removes things like Candy Crush if it's installed, Dell, anything from Dell, Dropbox, Facebook, Keeper, March of Empires, McAfee, Twitter, Minecraft, Plex, Netflix, TikTok, and Amazon Prime. Now, the one for TikTok has changed, and the one for Amazon Prime has changed, so we have to update that, and that's coming out soon, but I need to figure out where actually they relabeled it to. They labeled this something a little weirder, so I will have to figure that out later, but it does remove the majority. And again, if you ever want to remove any application, you could still right-click on it and choose uninstall. This is just a little bit faster way of doing it. It also checks for McAfee, and it also changes some of your settings for if you have a laptop. It turns off hotspot sharing, and it also turns off hotspot auto connect, which could get you in trouble over time, so that's why it's turned off. Start menu, we also disable the Bing search results. This is another feature that just slows down the whole unit. So when you click start like this and you type in something like Google, it starts searching Bing. Now, we have a fast network here and it comes up really quickly. But if your internet is down, your whole start bar button doesn't work because it's searching Bing and it has to wait for Bing to cancel out before it decides to display something. So that we disable that usually just because it slows everything down and it becomes a real hassle. You could also, you can comment this line if you want, and if you comment that line, it will just keep Bing enabled for you. Disable telemetry, we remove the diag tracking. That's Microsoft that sets that up. It tracks a lot of like crash programs and other stuff like that, but it also takes up a lot of resources in the background. And if you have an advertiser ID associated with your computer, then you're already being tracked by Microsoft by that. So this will remove that tracking automatically for you. You will have to reboot your computer. That's that little note there. It's going to tell you to reboot. I also changed one more thing, which is the default for File Explorer. When we open up File Explorer, it defaults to this junk recent files thing. Instead, it's going to change to this PC instead. So that it's more kind of like Windows 7, where it has a direct, it just shows your drive letters instead. So to run this script, not so hard to do, but you have to follow a few quick directions. First of all, you're going to have to open up PowerShell. So open up PowerShell, and you're going to want to open it as administrator. How I did this, I just basically clicked start and I typed in PowerShell, and it comes up, and I just want to say run as administrator. You have to run as administrator for this to work. You must agree. Okay, when this comes up, you're now ready to start the directions. I'm going to open up my directions because it's just a little easier. I don't memorize all these commands off the top of my head. So it says open PowerShell as administrator, and then what you want to do is you want to set execution policy remote signed. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to run this script from your computer with the proper security permissions. If you run this script without running this line first, it probably will fail. So because it'll probably protect you and say, you're trying to run a script that is not fully signed. Again, why we didn't sign it was because of keeping it open source so you guys can view the file. If we did sign it, it would protect the file, and then therefore you wouldn't be able to make changes or see it or anything. So we're going to run that, and it's just going to ask you, are you sure? You just say yes. If you want, you can read about the little security notice and press enter, and then what you're going to do is run this script. So now what you're going to do is you're going to say ampersand to run the script, space, and then to the path. In this case, we're on B1. I can't type. There we go. And we're going to basically type and run it for remove bloat. Well, it's remove bloatware.ps1. What I did there was I just typed C:/ and I put the folder name, and I put the other slash for the file name, and I pushed tab base. I typed some of the names so at least it would pick the proper file, and I pushed tab and it guessed the rest of it. But you could also just copy and paste, the entire thing. We're gonna have a little bit better directions before we post it online. So if you do download this, you can watch this video, or you can, just read along with the directions. After you hit enter on this, it's going to run. Anything you run in PowerShell is immediate. So before you do this, this is the last chance before you can change anything back on that other file if you want to not, remove a piece of software. Again, it's not permanent, but you would have to go back and manually change the settings back for whatever you want. So this is the last chance before you run this. If we hit enter, it's going to do a bunch of weird stuff. You just wait. It's not a very, I don't know if this is exciting. Maybe this is for some people. All right, removing. You may get an error. That's okay. It may have not had that program installed, and it may come back with an error on some parts of the programs. It's okay to ignore it. As long as it gets down to complete and says it now has removed everything, it's also removed the telemetry, and it's telling you to reboot your machine. I'm not going to reboot right now. I just want to show what it removed. When I go back to apps and features, this is a lot smaller now. We have almost nothing in here now, which is just the basic, regular programs for Windows. None of the other junk. You don't see, there's no Xbox stuff. There's nothing else that's down below. There's no solitaire. It even removes solitaire for you. So if you're on a Windows, if you're on a business computer, you probably don't want solitaire, but if you're on a home computer, you might want solitaire. You can always put it back in. But it removed everything nice and smoothly, and now also the telemetry has been removed. And how I know is because it actually outputted removing and said, oh, the service has not been started, but it deleted the service that was part of it. So that service, you still have to reboot the machine to make sure that that service is not running anymore. If you want to double check, you could also hit Control Shift and Escape at the same time, and you can double check under Processes to see if telemetry is no more running, which I don't see it. Security. Diag track should be gone. Yeah, then it is. There's no diag track. It should be up here, actually. Yeah, there's no diag track. So that eliminates all of the problems with bloatware. It'll also remove McAfee at the same time. If you have McAfee installed, this process takes a little longer because McAfee takes about, depending upon your speed of your computer, about 5 to 10 minutes to remove. So you may be sitting at this prompt for a very long time, but that is okay. Just wait it out till it's finished, and then it'll ask you to reboot or give you a process notification of where to go next. At that point, once everything is done on this, you have now removed all the junk, and now you can exit this just by typing exit. And now at this point, what you want to do is you want to set your privacy settings. Also, if you noticed, if I go to File Explorer, it now brings me back to this PC instead, which I kind of like better. And if you click on Start, you'll notice some stuff has been gone. Some stuff like TikTok is still in here. You could also right-click that, just choose uninstall for now until we update our script. Once we get the script updated, you'll be able to do these without having to do that. These aren't installed, these are just icons. By the way, when I'm telling you about which one's installed and which one's not, there's an uninstall option listed there. I didn't want to uninstall news, that's not what I want. But everything under productivity can be removed. We can unpin that, we can unpin that. And now if you go back to start menu, it's just a regular start menu, and it's a lot more condensed. You could also get rid of Windows Store here if you want. We don't remove Windows Store. There's a little bit of back and forth about this. For a business computer, you probably don't need Windows Store, but some applications may require it for security keys and other stuff like that. So you may need to keep that installed. That's why we don't remove it. But it doesn't reinstall anything, which is nice. So at this point, this cut down here a little bit, not too much, but it cut down enough. It's still got OneDrive, unfortunately. OneDrive always comes back. Yeah, at this point, to customize the rest of this, what we usually do is we cut out the news. We just turn off news. We don't uninstall it just in case somebody wants it. Location is currently in use. See, this is why you need to set up security privacy settings. So to do that, you just click on Start, Settings. Then what you want to do is go over to Privacy. The first window, which is General, you want to uncheck all this garbage. This is going to basically turn off your advertising ID. It'll also turn off any accessing of your local language, any tracking, any improvements for start and search results. It'll turn all this garbage off. You don't want any of this on, because if you have this on, that means Microsoft is tracking that. So no matter what you're clicking on, it's going to slow your system down, because it has to then send it off to Microsoft at some point in time. So go back to speech, same thing. You know, this one should be already off. If you have a laptop, sometimes that's on. You don't want your microphone on listening to you all the time, so you may want to turn that off. Inking and typing presentation and personalization, I always turn this off. Even if I have, you know, a kind of like a tablet computer, that's the only time inking and typing personalization is really used. But you know, if you have a regular desktop, there's no need for this. Diagnostics, I usually turn off the tailored experiences, I delete the diagnostic data, and I make sure that they never bother me about feedback. I mean, if you want Microsoft to pop up a notification once in a while to you about how your experience is going with Windows, by all means turn that back on. But if you don't want to be bothered, just switch it over to the other one. We have another program that actually sets all these privacy settings for you. We don't have it released to the public at the current time. We're still changing a few more things around because we're using it in the tech field right now. Basically, once we have that ready, it'll give you these options all on one screen instead of having to go through all these screens. It'll also give you the default that we use and then the one that you could use anytime. And again, it's not permanent. It just changes a bunch of registry settings really quickly to say, you know, turn these features off. But if you turn them back on, it won't turn them back off again unless you rerun the program. Activity history, definitely turn this off. You don't want it storing any of your activity history. You don't want to send your activity to Microsoft. In fact, you want to even clear the current one that's already there. Going on, location, same thing. I would turn this off. Let it prompt you. Now, if you leave this here, location on this device is on. If you go to like a website that, you know, that you want it to actually pick up your location, it'll prompt you if you leave this on to on. If you change this to off, it will not prompt you at all, and it will just deny that website your location. So if you want this permanently off, hit change and then change it to off. And you know, you can also clear the history here and make sure that everything else is on off. Camera. Nowadays, since we have a lot of Zoom meetings and, you know, Google meetings and all that stuff, you may want to leave this on, but you may want to select which programs have access. I don't like the normal camera app having access, but if you have, let's say, Zoom or something, and you need it to have access to your webcam, then yeah, you would need to leave this on. If you don't do Zoom meetings or if you don't have a web camera, just change this to off, but you want to change it off up here. That'll turn off everything. In this case, I don't have a camera hooked up to this machine. Microphone, same thing. If you're on a laptop especially, you may want to change this to off, or you may want to select which programs you want to have access. If you're doing Zoom meetings and stuff, you're gonna have to leave that on, unfortunately, because it will keep your microphone off at all times, and that's no good either, because no one's gonna hear you during that meeting. So you can just flip this to whatever applications you don't want. Now it says allow desktop access to access your microphone. That has to stay on if you want, again, Zoom or like Google Meet or whatever program you're using to display that. Voice activation. Let me just turn this off. Let's just go back to flipping this off. I don't have a microphone on this system, so it would just be off anyway. Voice activation, again, this all turns off when you turn the other one off. If you leave it on, it'll ask you if you want to leave on voice activation. If you leave voice activation on, your microphone is consistently on. So it's kind of like having an Amazon Echo or I don't want to say the keyword because it'll probably trigger somebody if they're actually watching. So, you know, the ALEXA, you know, ALEXA, whatever. Or, you know, the Google Assistant. Ah, shoot, I just said it. Hopefully it didn't trigger anybody's phone. But anyway, long story short, if you have one of those, this is kind of like the same thing where you're actually leaving stuff on and leaving your microphone ready, and it's always going to go to Cortana or it's going to go to Microsoft Bing to try to search something. I prefer this off. You know, up to you if you feel comfortable with that. Notifications, I usually turn this off. I can't stand all those notifications in the corner. They're usually useless, but if you have Microsoft Outlook installed, you may want to customize this a little bit so that you can have a little Outlook window show up whenever you get a piece of mail. Account info. Yeah, this is just an off. I don't know why you'd want to, give your account information over to anything automatically. Same thing for contacts, calendar. All of this is pretty much should be off. Because then if you install Outlook, it'll give away that information to anything that connects to it. Now the problem with that also is that malware runs the same way. So if you leave this on, malware can get in there and actually steal your entire contacts list and stuff like that. So we usually turn this off. History again, off. Email, off. Tasks, off. Messaging, off. If you have Skype installed or Teams, or I think Zoom has a chat feature, I think, maybe. This may have to be turned back on if you want to see those messages in the notification area. Radios, you could just change this off. If you have Bluetooth installed, you may need to turn radios on. So if you have Bluetooth on your computer and you want to use it, then you would turn this back to on, and you would allow your Bluetooth to connect. If you turn this off, your Bluetooth's not going to work at any point in time. So you may want to, depends on the system on this one. We don't have Bluetooth on here, so I'm just going to flip it off. Same thing with communicate with unpaired devices. If you turn this off, you won't be able to pair with like headphone sets and stuff like that. That's Bluetooth. Now, if it has a regular like little USB dongle or something, that will bypass this because that has nothing to do with Bluetooth. It has to do with its own little communication thing. So it actually will bypass that. Background apps. I turn these all off, but if you want, you could turn on which ones you want to stay on. I personally think all of them should be off, just because you end up with a lot less, usage in the computer. Your performance level is going to go a lot higher. Right now, just sitting idle, not doing much, we're already using 3% of the CPU. Now, don't get me wrong, this is an older computer, so that's going to happen. But if I turn on background apps and we wait a few seconds, because it always takes forever, it's going to start consuming some memory in the background. And it's already at 2%, but it's probably going to, yeah, see, like some things like news and interest, oh, it's got a green leaf. So it's on a background app, but the minute you go to it, it's going to consume a lot more. And it's already consuming a lot of RAM. Looks like it's consuming more RAM than anything. Yeah, it's here and there. Right now, this machine is kind of cut down a lot, but if you're getting something from, like, let's say a Dell or HP where they install a lot of garbage, turning that off for the background apps will probably save you a good 10% on the CPU. Apps and diagnostic, this could be off all the time. There's no reason to send the information over to them unless you're getting a lot of crashes. If you're getting a lot of crashes, you could turn that back on if Microsoft requires it if you need Microsoft support, which usually they don't give you much support. So you could either go to them and try to get some support. If they need that, then you can turn that back on temporarily to find out what's going on, if there really is something wackadoo going on. But normally it should be off, in my opinion. Documents, again, well, nothing really should have access to this, or your pictures, or your videos. If the program is installed directly, the system will be able to allow you access to those folders. So you really don't need this on. This is just saying, like, allowing it automatically. If this is all off, it's going to basically prompt you and say, hey, can I access this folder? That's better, because at least this way, if you won't get ransomwared very easily, because if a ransomware gets onto your machine, it will have a hard time getting into those folders. It's not going to protect you 100%. You should still have an antivirus. You should still have malware protection. So it doesn't really go around that, but it does protect it a little bit. So going back to the home screen, that's it for privacy. I would really want to change much more for privacy. I would just kind of go through each section, turning off what you don't want. And I would definitely go through it and read it, understand it, know what you're turning off, because most of the time a lot of this stuff is kind of confusing. That's why I kind of went through with my default settings that I use, but you're welcome to use whatever settings you want. And it really depends what you're using. Like, again, if you're using a camera, you have no choice but to leave it on. But do realize that if you have it on, programs can access that camera or microphone at any point in time. So it might be advisable to turn off. If you have a camera, I'm going to just go over camera security just really quickly. If you already have a camera, you really should have a slide on it for privacy, a privacy slide. You should already have that. If you have a laptop that doesn't have a privacy slide, you may want to put a sticker over it if you don't use it very often, or a Band-Aid. Band-Aid works good too. Just to keep a little extra privacy. But I would definitely go through the privacy settings and turn off like microphone and stuff like that. Especially laptop cameras. A lot of laptop cameras don't have a light, so you won't even know it's on, which is really bad. So I would invest in maybe a laptop that does have the camera slider on it. Or you could also get the camera removed. We also do camera removal from a laptop if you don't want that at all. When you buy a laptop from us, we offer that option if it's brand new, and if it's available that we could take it out without breaking the system, then we'll be able to do that for you ahead of time, so there will be no camera in the system. Some people do not want a camera at all, and that is the best way to go without having to worry about privacy. Or you can order some laptops don't have cameras. The higher end stuff actually don't have cameras. The higher end laptops, they don't put cameras in because the camera resolution is kind of crappy, and they just expect you to install a USB one if you want to use it. Turn it off. Yeah. That's about it for that. Let me just double check if there's anything else in my notes. Create a script. Yes. Allow registry settings. Yeah. Our PowerShell script will be available on the website soon, probably about 1 to 2 hours after this live stream. It will be updated constantly. We will try to come back to the video and update the date that we updated it on. But if we didn't, we're actually going to probably just create a little page where it's going to say like when it was last updated, and and a link to download it. So if you want to download it and try it on your own machine and see how much faster it might improve your speed, it's welcome. We will also be offering that other program down the road, which will be a little bit easier to use than running the shell script. The shell script, I know, is a little bit complicated because you gotta run 2 commands before it. It's a little trickier. But the newer one, what we were going to do with the program, will probably offer like little checkboxes and stuff for you, so it'll be a little bit easier to work with. But for now, the PowerShell script does work. We've been using it on our tech side for a little bit. I've been testing it pretty much for a few days, but the script itself, the newer additions to it, I've been using it here for most of our systems for about 1 to 2 months. I haven't really given it out to the techs that we have for a few good reasons, because it's not fully perfected yet. So, but now it's more than perfected enough for it to work. We have run it on a few systems with no issues. But again, we're going to probably roll out the privacy one very shortly anyway, which will also do the privacy settings as well as all the rest of the telemetry issues. But if you want to get started today, we'll have that available for you. I don't see any questions, which I guess is a good thing. I hope. Or I've totally lost you guys halfway through this. Hopefully not. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat if you're still here. If not, put them in the comments below. I do read the comments. I know a lot of other people don't read the comments. I do read the comments. So, if you have questions about telemetry, or if you have questions about how this works, again, just ask, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. I'm going to cut the live stream at the current time. I hope to see you guys on the next one. We have our next build is Monday. So Monday evening, we will have a build going out That one you may want to watch. That one's actually a totally different build. It's a different case. It's a little more nicer case, and so I'm going to have to go through a lot more cable management. It also is a little bit more of a higher end spec machine. That machine's also being used here in the studio because I'm running off a laptop here and it's kind of garbage. So I am going to go use that. It's going to be a lot better system. We're going to build that live on Monday, probably around 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So, you know, might want to check that out, and we'll see you in the next live stream.